So I think it must have been 97 or 98 when I had my first Thanksgiving after doing a cutoff from my family. And I don't remember the first Christmas, but I do remember that Thanksgiving. The year prior, I had started therapy for childhood trauma and then joined a childhood trauma therapy group that really changed my life. And that work in that group was the support that I needed to go through with that kind of cutoff. And I made my first turkey and celebrated it with a good friend who I played in bands with in my apartment that I shared with roommates who were coworkers at this restaurant that I worked at the time. And I had also just moved out of my childhood home the year before, and my roommates were out that Thanksgiving and away with their families, and we had the apartment to ourselves. The apartment was a quaint, rustic New England triple-decker with the second floor with the double porches. One was enclosed so I could smoke my butts in the winter, no problem. Loved it. Loved that apartment. I luckily had a really good people to live with me in that apartment through those years, but that period in my life was rough due to processing my trauma and sitting with the grief through the therapy that I was doing. I even got sober and healthier in that apartment, and eventually I quit smoking too there. Me leaving home around that time, like many childhood trauma survivors, wasn't like a rite of passage like heading off to college or something like that. It was more like a nasty divorce, or it felt like I felt like a refugee escaping something. And escaping my family system at the time was really the best thing that I ever did. But the alien feeling of not being connected to a family around the holidays was really rough. Super painful when friends or coworkers would just hop on buses or go home because they didn't go home because that didn't really exist for me, you know, because literally the childhood home was now gone. So we had this really quiet and somewhat sad Thanksgiving that was good enough. And my friend, you know, they had their own sort of family problems, and I was just grateful to not be alone on that day. I was about 20 years old. But had I not done that cutoff, here is what that Thanksgiving that year would have looked like. My fragmented remaining nuclear family would have gotten together and pretended that there wasn't huge glaring issues in the family. You could probably cut the recent drama in the family with a knife at that gathering. We would have sat through hours of watching a parent drink themselves into a weepy mess, despite asking them not to drink and them agreeing that they wouldn't drink before the holiday. There would have been tension with the other family members about that parent's drinking, like who wasn't watching them enough or who wasn't trying their hardest to make the best of it. I would have been indirectly or directly shamed if I took a walk or got real about what was going on. And the BS about how good the food was to just distract ourselves from the mess unfolding in front of us. Or engaging in the family's ways of connecting, which is either through gossip or recounting who let the family down or who let the alcoholic parent down. Like we would be enabling their resentments and ignoring what was their responsibility in things. You might even get blamed and shamed for the parents drinking because you weren't thoughtful enough to pick up the parent before they picked up alcohol. And I think the worst of it would have been the emotional hangover, or that I would have gone into my reliable survival response, which is to really check out, shut down, leave my body. Existential crisis. What I just described to you actually was a family gathering that took place in that same apartment around that time before I did the cutoff. At that event, I remember needing to take a break and going into my rented room and try to regroup and ground myself before going back out to my alcoholic parents' intoxication and mess. In addition, the elephant in the room was that the year prior was that my little nuclear family had its biggest schism in the family in this abuse event that led to me moving out, all due to the parents' alcoholism. So I wanted to share a little bit of the before, the during, and the after regarding my own family cutoff. Here are some common cutoff issues that people experience, and I've gotten emails asking for some guidance on the complex issue of managing a cutoff, and I'm going to try to do my best here. For those that emailed me, thank you. I get them, I read them, and I'm sorry that I can't respond to all of them, but I very much appreciate you, and I very much appreciate your situations. Try to think about this video as both exploring why to do a cutoff, but also maybe navigating the really triggering and unsettling issues that come up in one. Try to think about this video as both exploring why to do a cutoff, but also navigating the really triggering and unsettling issues that come up in one. Like whether you're either about to initiate a cutoff or you're in the middle of one and you're dealing with things like the holidays or the family dynamics around the cutoff. Let's explore what I see as common issues that childhood trauma survivors face when they initiate a cutoff or they're navigating one. The issues can look like cutting off a parent or a sibling but still being in contact with other family members, or siblings or family members retaliating by cutting you off or being manipulative to you after you do a cutoff with, say, a parent, or parents or family members crossing major boundaries and connecting with your partner or your children to get sympathy or get an ally to team up against you, or parents going full drama after you cutting them off, like showing up to your home, showing up to work, and aggressively going after you to talk. This is a hard one, being tormented about having to leave a vulnerable family member behind if you were to do a cutoff. That one is brutal. Or being gaslit, demonized, retaliated against, monkey business, shenanigans by the family. And I know that this sounds counterintuitive to a cutoff, but doing a cutoff and there's just radio silence, like no reaction, kind of an FU to your FU, like it was too easily for them to accept that you're out, which that might be a blessing, but it can still be hard. And like in another video that I did on ways a toxic family will shame you around a cutoff, a parent or a family member can rally the extended family to shame you or other family members trying to bridge. You could also experience just judgment from friends about doing a cutoff. And a deep issue is being somewhat numb or shut down or removed from doing a cutoff, like removed from the feelings. And it's a symptom of childhood trauma and growing up in abuse to not have big feelings about things, and that can kind of freak us out. Or simply like that Thanksgiving I mentioned, an issue is simply dealing with and processing the feelings of grief that come with doing a cutoff. Whatever your situation is, please know that doing a cutoff is the most painful thing I ever did, with the greatest shift and results in my recovery. That being said, not everyone needs to do a cutoff. I have clients that they have a family system that they're manageable in a surfacey way, or the dysfunction doesn't get in the way of having a good enough or superficial relationship with them. But the majority of my clients do need time away from their family to better heal the parts that make them engage with their family in ways that isn't good for them, like people-pleasing or rescuing or not speaking up about others being abused, or just staying stuck in the trauma system that did all the abuse. So I always advocate as much as possible for space from an abusive family when we are working on trying to heal. If you're new to me or new to the channel, welcome. If you like this video, you can hit some buttons on your screen, specifically the like or the share or the subscribe button. And if you find that these videos are helpful to you in your recovery, you can consider supporting the work that goes into this channel over at my Patreon. And I do not take on any paid third-party sponsorships because I feel like it mucks things up for the viewers. In addition, you can go to my website and check out some childhood trauma e-course work that I offer there, including a course recording of a recent shame webinar that I did that has an inner child exercise, a very helpful exercise called dialoguing. And you can also get in touch with me through my website or connect with me over at my TikTok or my Instagram, and I'll have all the links in the description of this video below. So let's get into some reminders about why you left or why you might want to leave. The options around a cutoff are really not that great. On one hand is to go along with the status quo where the family is just as abusive or as off as always, but they're your family. And, you know, they're all you got, but they're very comfortable with re-traumatizing you or gaslighting you, and they have no interest in any healthy change. On the other hand, we do the incredibly hard footwork of separating ourselves from our family system and finding a healthier place in the world for ourselves. Cutoffs are not just about getting space from the toxic system. That's not the only goal. The goal is to create space to heal, to get away from the source of our negative core belief system, and to nurture and cultivate a healthier sense of self and a healthier community. Let's look at some of the issues that got us here. Whether you're contemplating a cutoff or dealing with issues around a cutoff, if you ever second guess yourself, you can come back to this video as a resource or a reminder. What probably got you here to this point, just like where I was in my own family cutoff, is the reasons can look like any of the following. A big reason is not being seen. This can range from being taken advantage of financially, like credit cards being opened up in your name, to the family ignoring or denying that you were sexually assaulted, or simply that not seeing you outside of the role the family puts you in, like scapegoat or hero or the kid who doesn't need anything, which is like the neglected child. Not being seen is also wrapped up in not being able to affect your family. Just like in my example about setting a boundary around a parent drinking and they just get wasted anyway and blast through that boundary despite agreeing to it. Another reason is the family is toxic around your kids or your spouse. This is a big one, and I've had a lot of clients who have their own children really struggle with having them around the grandparent who is abusive to the other grandparent, or to you, or to your spouse, or to others, or they're emotionally off around your kids. Narcissistic parents or family members are constantly grooming potential allies. And we'll come back to this later in the video when we focus on values. Another reason is you're blamed. Toxic families scapegoat other members as a way to distract themselves from the real abuse and toxicity, which is them, and you're blamed for that you needed to be picked up at the airport, or you didn't get the right gifts, or that you spoke up against a sexually off family member. In my example, my family would blame me for causing the alcoholic to go on binges if I set a boundary or challenged them or got real, and in short, things are easily turned around on you. Another reason are safety issues. Everyone's trauma and family is different. It can range from having to block a family member from being abusive to you over text, or we might actually need police involvement or restraining orders, and then you're blamed for needing a restraining order. Whether it's personal attacks to you or incredibly risky behavior like starting physical fights in public. And I've had clients where their spouse was physically attacked by a toxic parent, or the family continues to dismiss that. And I've had clients who themselves get attacked by a parent at family gatherings and the family took no action about it. Another reason is simply abuse. Like you go to Thanksgiving and there's teasing over your sexual preferences or your politics, or just ridicule about your career choices. Like you're the toxic family system's entertainment and the target for passive aggressive and sarcastic contempt. And the last reason is the values are off. Say the family engages in like a religious community, but that's entirely for superiority or to others or for show. Say the family acts superior or that it looks good on paper as a way to mask like its enmeshment or neglectful parenting. Say the family revolves around one abusive toxic family member who abuses others, but the family codependently thinks that ignoring it is the best course of action, like the horrifically abusive aunt or uncle or sibling that lives with your parents is never held accountable for when they act out or when they instigate. And these are all value examples around choosing what looks good or choosing to avoid things over doing what's right. So that's some of the reasons what got us here. Lastly is you don't have to compare your trauma or your family to justify your cutoff. If your family doesn't get physically violent with your partner or gets into financial abuse, but they are hopelessly stuck in their codependency or substance abuse, that's reason enough to get some space. Like, it's okay. Now, let's look at some goals to reset our commitment to the idea of doing a cutoff. Here are some concepts that I've learned that help us stay in the following goals around the cutoff. There are 3 goals that I have going on. The first goal is to sit in your truth and to not give in. Don't give in just because the cutoff is uncomfortable. The second goal is to embrace the discomfort. If you're uncomfortable with the cutoff, you're doing it right. That's what to expect with these things. And the third goal is to trade the discomfort in exchange for a new, healthier life. Like the price of the discomfort is that you're paying for the healing space. You're paying for the peace. You're exchanging being directly abused for choosing to process your family system through grief, which leads to growth and healing and change. For example, the change in the benefits look like if you survived in your family system by being submissive or compliant, you most likely do that in your career or with your partners. or your kids even. You know, a cutoff from that source gives you the motivation to not engage like that with your kids or with work or your partner. And a cutoff creates the headspace and the safety to start changing that behavioral stuff. Staying in the family system reinforces those submissive or compliant beliefs that our inner child thinks it still needs to do to survive, which it doesn't. So let's apply these 3 goals to some specific cutoff issues and scenarios. The first is the tricky one of the issue around a cutoff where there's grandparents and your children. So I often get requests about this situation where the person doing a cutoff has children and they're struggling with not having their kids see the abusive parents who are now the grandparents. So if they were a client, I would be supporting them through the following ideas, and keep those goals in mind. Is coming back to the values, I would ask them, do you value the grandparents' off behavior? Do you value protecting your children from those abusive and off behaviors? If they weren't your parents, like let's just say they were neighbors, would you want them involved with your family? I know that might sound odd. I often have clients that hate seeing grandma abuse grandpa in front of their kids or vice versa. Or they hate seeing the grandparent try to like mold and shape the grandchildren into like abusive beliefs. Like men or women are stupid, or kids don't have feelings, or it's simply okay to make fun of, scare, or humiliate someone in the family. If you don't hold those values and don't parent your children like that, then it's healthy to not expose your kids to that stuff. Your children are also smart. They probably see it and feel it too. If it's cringy and icky to you, then it's probably like that for them if they're beyond the age of, say, 2. Another issue or another thing that I would be supporting in is to coaching around how do you explain it to your children. Explaining such a cutoff to a child is really tricky and most likely heartbreaking for you. I think that a teenager would be able to understand better than, say, a 4-year-old, but I think it's okay to inform your kids from a place of simply the truth and what you value. Like saying to your kids, we're not seeing Nana and Opa this year because they struggle with treating people with kindness and respect. And we value kindness and respect. It's simply okay to just sort of call it as it is, but you have to kind of gauge about what the developmental age of your kid and what they can really understand. So another idea that I would be working with clients around, and this is the most powerful idea I think, is when I ask clients who have small children or when their kids were small if they would be comfortable having the grandparents watch the children or babysit. Most say they're not comfortable in any way, and that's outside of like geriatric issues or cognitive decline issues. And then when I talk about it, if the grandparents aren't safe for your kids, what makes them safe for you or for your spouse? If your kids aren't safe with them, then you and your inner child aren't emotionally safe with your parents either. So there's that scenario. Let's move into the scenario where we're cutting out some family but not all. Let's say the sibling or another parent attacks you or plays leverage with you, like demanding you apologize or take back your cutoff, and if not, they're going to cut you out. This one can even be applied as simply getting pushback or being shamed around cutting off one abusive family member. Which, by the way, this is usually very complicated if you don't have other members in the family who are working on being healthy themselves. We usually don't have that in this work. Cutoffs are really seen as petty, as radical, as entitled, as abandoning, and morally wrong in the eyes of a toxic family. But again, we don't let toxic people tell us who we are anymore. If a client of mine was in this scenario, I'd be supporting them through the following ideas. While it's painful, sitting in your truth and not giving in might take realizing the following things. The person has a totally different idea of what the family is than you do. That's one thing. The other thing is they don't have to get it, actually, and you don't have to give in or agree. Another is the person is part of that system, especially if they don't get it. And the system protects the most toxic person. Remember to think about what you personally value. Another way I would sort of coach them around this is these are very painful scenarios, but at some point, your truth and having the family member understand are at a total impasse. Choosing yourself and letting the person go might be helped by looking at the following ideas around our codependency. One is Half-safe people are not safe. Another is the person that you might really want and need in your life is choosing the toxic family over you because it's easier to disappoint you and let you down and put you into that old role than it is to go after sort of the toxic family member or the toxic system. That's a big one. They are also engaging in victim blaming and manipulation and lines in the sand. Who did they learn from in your family system? Who did they pick? Where did they get that from? And I wish I had better advice, but like my mentor Amanda Curtin says about the abusive family, which is you have nothing to really work with. And I find that nearly all childhood trauma survivors, including myself, we're kind of, at some point, I was looking for an easier, softer way to make things work until we realize what the family system really is. And that takes a long time. That takes a long process to get there. About the half-safe family member, even if they don't manipulate you, but yet they don't support you, that's what I mean by half-safe, you can also just not engage in the topic with them of the cutoff and redirect the conversation or simply set a boundary that you're not really going to come together on the issue of the cutoff. So there's that. Let's do another. Let's simply look at dealing with the feelings of grief and pain after a cutoff, especially around the holidays. You might be in the feelings of having just done a cutoff or you did one a long time ago, and there's really a special kind of loneliness that comes up when you're orphaned by choice around the holidays. And I think the hardest thing for me was seeing other people with seemingly healthier family relationships go and have that time with them. Especially like when I had done that cutoff, it was still very fresh. When I have a client who is in this space or they're about to do a cutoff, they know that once they do it, there will be a lot of big feelings that come with it. But there is usually also some instant feelings of empowerment or relief, but it's no small thing to remove ourselves from our family. There's some sadness that follows, especially on special days. So here is how I would support clients who are in this space. I'd work with them on creating 2 lists. One being the reasons why they did the cutoff in the first place or they're about to. And this list consists of concrete situations like dad losing it at your wedding over nothing, the financial stuff, the physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, the protecting of perpetrators, the gaslighty smoke and mirrors stuff, or simply the sad stuckness in the family. The other part of the list is I would write down what you would gain from the cutoff, like the space, the peace, the empowerment, the final real acknowledgement to yourself about the truth about your family. Not having to be submissive, not having to subject yourself to the constant criticism, not exposing yourself or your spouse or your kids to the gross off behavior or the toxic modeling. And you get to create a new path with your own values, such as respecting other people, owning your stuff instead of deflecting it, advocating more for victims of abuse as opposed to enabling abusers. And the best is allowing yourself the space to simply become you, not what your family role is and not what they expect you to be. So that's the first exercise. The second one is I would support a client in this space and encourage them to find some community. That can look like any of the following. Finding support with like-minded people, which feels maybe a lot like the comment section to these videos. Finding a group such as ACOA or online forums about family abuse or a group therapy, if that's possible. And then making it okay for you to be part of somebody else's gathering and not isolating yourself. Another is to create your own holiday celebration with fellow orphans. And if you have to be alone, make it a special occasion with your inner child and really talk to them about while it might be sad, it's safer and you're there for them, protecting them. Like the adult you did this cutoff on behalf of your inner child. So some final thoughts. I hope this video either helps you on your journey in a cutoff or resets your reasons or simply answers some questions. Family cutoffs present a wide range of complicated issues and that there really isn't enough time to get to all of them. But here are some additional notes. Cutoffs can be much harder when the abuse behavior is more covert and manipulative versus being loud and blatant. It's somewhat easier when the family or the person is off the charts visibly abusive, like physical threats, physical violence, substance abuse, off sexual behaviors. It's harder to leave when there is, say, a parent who is covert and mind-effy, but doesn't exist something loud or blatant like domestic violence. But abuse is abuse. Another idea for perspective is clients who start work with me who are already in a cutoff tend to do better in their recovery. If they have the distance between themselves and their family, they have so much more head and emotional space to do work on themselves. It's harder when you're mid-cutoff or still in the family system to find that space and energy to heal. And lastly, again, the hardest and the best thing I've ever done in my life is separated myself from my family system in order to heal. It felt like really diving into a pool, not knowing how deep or how shallow it was. But it was breaking free from an abusive system and getting space allowed me to create my own family, my own healthy identity, a better belief system about people and the world, and it allowed me to create intimacy and a sense of community that I wouldn't trade for the world. I couldn't have done all that by being stuck and swimming in all my family's muck and drama while still being abused. So I hope that that was helpful to you in some ways, and as always, may you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease, and may you be joyous. Take care, and I will see you next time.